Okay, so we've been working on stuff for KatsuCon, and we realized that now would probably be a good time to film some of what we're doing, because it's kind of good cosplay tips and tricks. We're making a pair of pants right now for Persona 5 cosplay, and the best way to make pants, if you don't want to get a pants pattern, because patterns are expensive and useless, is you take a pair of like sweatpants, or like pajama pants, or whatever, and you fold them in half this way, and then see this like little butt portion that sticks out? You take this, and you lay it down, and you sort of like cut around this shape, leaving yourself like 1.5 inches of excess material on like all sides, so you can cuff it and make the band at the top and have extra room in the legs. And basically what you do is you fold your fabric in half, and you cut out that shape, and then you set that to the side, and you fold your fabric in half again, and you cut it out again, so you'll have 4 pieces that are all this sort of shape. So now that you have your 4 pieces cut out, sort of in a stack like this, you're going to separate them into like stacks of 2, right? So it's going to be 2 pieces like that. And you're going to locate like the pointy butt part of your pants. And basically you're going to pin from there up to like the waist part of the pants. And you're going to do that on both sides. It's not how you expect pants to be made, but it's how it works. Make sure that the outside of this material is what you actually want to be the inside. So now what you're going to do is you're going to stitch from the waist part to the pointy butt part. You're going to do a straight stitch, and then you're going to do a zigzag stitch along the edge, because we don't want the crotch part of your pants to tear. That would be very embarrassing. Don't sew over your pins. So once you sew your straight stitch, you're going to cut off the excess, leaving about a little less than 1 centimeter of excess fabric between the edge and your line of stitching. Now once you have your straight stitch down that part, you're going to switch it to zigzag stitch, and you're going to go right along the edge, so not over top of the seam you made, but it's almost going to look like the needle is going off of the material. I'm going to slow it down so you can see what's going on. So you put it so it's actually going on then off of the material. And that's sort of going to work to seal in your stitching. So if any like wear and tear happens to the main straight stitch part, it's not going to immediately rip, and it sort of holds it together. This is why a lot of seams on like professionally made clothing are surged, where it's that sort of like pattern of 4. This is sort of trying to emulate that on a smaller scale. What you're going to do now is you're going to take this and you're going to unfold it so you can actually see the 2 sections, and now it starts to look like the shape of pants. And what you're going to do is you're going to open up that side, and you're going to open up this side. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to, if you can see it, you're going to take your 2 seams, and you're going to press those together so that your little seam is on the outside, right? And I'm going to stick a pin right there to keep those together, just so I know. And I stretch out their sides. I'm going to pin this together. This part right here that I'm pinning together is the waist of the pants, the waistband. So this part isn't actually going to get sewn closed, because you got to put your body in it, but it's just going to hold it in place for you. So what you're going to do is you're going to go down here to the bottom part of these seams, and you're going to pin it here as well. This is the seam we made, and it's pinned at the top and pinned at the bottom, and the other seam we made is on the other side. So then what you're going to do is you're going to stretch out the legs of your pants like this, and you're going to pin all the way up the leg of the pants, across the inseam part, and down the other side of the leg. And this is going to make the inner part of your pants. Pro tip, you can always make it smaller. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing that we did on the seams before. We're going to do a straight stitch, and then we're going to zigzag stitch afterwards. So when you hit the seam in the pants, this is going to be the center, like innermost, like crotch zone of your pants. I like to backtrack a couple times across this very like, I'm going to slow this down so you can see what's going on. I like to backtrack over this very middle part to sort of strengthen it, because this is where the majority of your motion happens, generally when you're posing or just moving around. So I backtrack over that particular section, because that's one of the weakest points, because it's so thick, there's a lot of material sewn together. And then just like on that inner seam, you're going to trim the excess. Alright, once you have all of the excess trimmed, you're going to zigzag stitch along the edge again. Sewing is very repetitive. So now that you're done the inseam of your pants, you're going to work on the outside of your pants. You know, the edge that contains your legs. So I'm going to start up at the waistband, and I'm going to take this pin that I had up here, and I'm going to now put it in this side of it. And I'm just going to pin from top to the end of the leg, putting these edges together. Pro tip, always pin. If that little gremlin in the back of your brain says, I don't need to pin this, I'll be fine, don't listen to it. Just pin it. I just stabbed myself with a pin. Another pro tip, when you're working with a material like this that has like a definite pattern, any place that you can like really line up the pattern, do that. Try and actually line up the edges of things. As you move down, you'll start to notice that not all the patterns line up. This is normal. Okay, now that that side's pinned, you're gonna go and pin the other side of the... Alright, now just like everything else we have done so far, you're gonna stitch a straight stitch and then a zigzag stitch.
Wow.
Yes. Alright, now you're going to sew the other side. We're going to do the zigzags at the same time together so we don't forget to switch it. And trim the excess.
Ooh, my favorite part.
Yes.
Snip, snip.
Now we're going to zigzag the sides. Alright, now we do something a little bit more complicated. We're going to do the waistband. So you take your pants, hold them up, and what you're going to do is you're going to open them this way, and you're going to flip this down so it overlaps like that. And you want to make sure it overlaps enough that you're going to be able to fit whatever elastic you have through it. So this is a little bit much for the amount of elastic I have, so I'm going to tone that down a little bit. But I also want to end up shortening these pants a little bit, so I'm going to leave a little bit extra. So what you're going to do is you're going to pick whichever side you want to be the back of the pants, and I'm going to choose this side to be the back of the pants. And what you're going to do, making sure you keep your seam lined up, making sure you keep your seam lined up, what you're going to do is use pins to sort of mark two sections. So when I'm marking a section, I tend to put two pins right next to each other like this, so I actually know to stop there instead of just to take them out and keep sewing. And then I'm going to put another two on this side here. This marks the opening that I'm going to leave to thread the elastic through, because I like to sew my waistband before I put the elastic in. So I'm going to mark that there, and then holding it by the sides like this, I'm going to put pins here to hold it in place, and on the other side to hold it in place. And then I'm just going to keep pinning around it just to hold this exactly where I want it. So when you're sewing like this, you're gonna line up the edge of your you're gonna line it up with the edge of the material rather than the inner edge here, so the folded part. So what I'm gonna do in order to leave room for it is I'm gonna keep this pressed against this outer part of the panel for the entire time I'm going around. So I'm gonna get it into the position I want. So this is going to end up leaving me with a lot of excess material on that side, but that's totally fine. We're going to cut it off when we're done. So starting right here, make sure you backtrack. So when you come around again to this side and you see the other side of your marker pins, you're going to backtrack again there, and then you're going to take it off the machine. Trim your thread, both sides. And then you can take off your marker pins now because it's pretty obvious where the opening is. And what you're going to do is you're going to go around and trim this excess. So you can see this is where this loop here is where the elastic is going to go, and this excess here is just the other side. And you can just trim that off. Be very careful not to cut through the other part of the material because that's cutting your pants and that's not good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to measure out our elastic. So what you do to measure out the elastic, basically what you do on the elastic is you pick where on your waist you're going to put it. And obviously don't do it with a whole bunch of sweatshirts on, but I'm just going to sort of demonstrate right now. Basically, you wrap the elastic around your waist to where it's like comfortable fitting like this. Then you're going to tighten it so the elastic is actually stretched around your waist, because the point of elastic is to tightly hold your pants up, not just sort of loosely sit there. So you're going to pull it so it's tight, and then what you're going to do is you're going to cut it with at least an inch, maybe an inch and a half of excess, because what you're going to do is once you cut your elastic, you're going to like layer it over top of itself and sew that together, but I'll show you how to do that when we get there. Have the length of elastic that you're going to use. What I like to do is in this opening we made right here, I sort of flip this open and I'm going to pin one side of the elastic in here, so as we're pulling it through it doesn't slide out. So the next part is a little bit tricky if you're not paying attention. So I pin this in here. I have 2 pins going either way just to hold that really securely in there. And I get the end of my elastic and I put it in this little hole here that we made. So now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be sliding the elastic through this little opening, this little band we made around the top. Just take your time pulling it through. It's easiest to sort of like scrunch it up like that, grip the front part of it, and then slide it that way. Some people find it easier when doing this part of it to attach a safety pin to the end here, so you can hold on to the safety pin as you're doing it. I don't know where any of my safety pins are right now, so we're going to do it without one. Okay, so once you reach the end here, you're going to be able to pull this end out, and you'll see this one stayed nice and pinned in place here for you. Just take out those pins. Now what I like to do is I hold both ends of these and sort of scrunch the pants down like that. That way I can make sure it's not twisted anywhere in here. So then we get to the part I mentioned earlier. You take either side of your elastic like this, and you overlap it that way. About an inch, maybe a little over an inch. It's probably an inch and a half that I have here. And what you do on your machine is you go nuts sewing it. Part of the garment obviously takes a lot of wear and tear because you have to stretch this to put it on and take it off. So it's important to sew it a lot in order to get it to hold. People who aren't me like to make like a border around the edge of sewing it and then put an X through the center, and that's good enough for them. I prefer to just go wild on it. That's just my preference. So then what you're going to do is stretch the pants out again and make sure this piece here tucks right into that opening you made. Then what you're going to do is lay this totally flat, put it back onto your machine, and since we lined it up with the edge earlier, when we line it up with the edge now, we end up right on that seam we sewed before. And we're just going to close up this opening. So now your waistband is totally closed off, and you can see it starting to do that like natural stretching thing that you like at the top of pants. And see, that's nice and straight the whole way around on the outside. Now we move on to the last part of it, which is going to be making the cuffs of the pants. So what you're going to do now is you're going to cuff the bottoms of your pants off enough to hem them to the length you want, as well as make a fold at the edge of it so it's nice and clean. So you want to obviously make sure you're folding the nice side onto the inside of it. And just like the waistband of the pants, what we're going to be doing here is putting pins just sort of around the outside of it. And we're going to be, this time, we don't need it to be as big of a loop. I'm just going to line it up with sort of the edge of the foot right here, the foot of the machine. And I'm going to keep it lined up there all the way around to create a nice even line. So now you have that nice clean line going all the way around it. And you're, just like before, going to cut off this now thick excess piece. In this one, because this is a much narrower piece, be extra careful not to accidentally cut through the leg of your pants. It's very easy to accidentally do that. Now you're going to move on to the other side. It is imperative that you make sure your legs are the same length. Just because we're not fancy doesn't mean we're not accurate. So then what you're going to do is turn your pants right side out again. And you're done. There's your pajama pants or cosplay pants or formal interview pants all ready to go. That's it. I'm done. End of the video. Get packed for con.